Tired of bloating, fatigue and sluggish digestion? Meet your gut's new best friend, NutriHealth 365's microbiome supplement. Restore balance, boost immunity, and feel amazing from the inside out. Smart delayed release capsules, real results. Gut health just got personal.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Thursday's episode of Trending. On the show today, digital ID to turn neighbours into informants. Donald Trump is playing, I think it's about 482D chess with Pfizer, and US influencers to be paid $7,000 per post to sell their backside for Israel. Welcome to this morning's episode of Trending, brought to you in association with NutriHealth 365. The link is in the description below. Okay, let's kick off today. Digital ID. No. Digital ID to turn neighbours into informants. This is from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Now, this is a piece by Big Brother Watch, which are very, very good on digital ID and have been for a very, very long time. They're definitely worth looking at. This is a post from them. Tony Blair's think tank wants digital IDs to turn neighbours into informants, including for noise complaints, with each complaint contributing to your community impact score. That's a posh way of saying social credit system, isn't it? The proposal is buried, as they always are, in a report released just 2 days before Keir Starmer announced plans for a mandatory digital ID. The Prime Minister is saying publicly that the government is mandating them for every adult for the right to work checks, but keeps quiet about how many areas of public life they could be used for. This is what they do. They give you a sales pitch. It's going to be for this, and then they just sort of don't look over there. Look, there's a raccoon on the porch. Look, oh no, look, it's eating your eggs. And they keep that away from you. Now, what they're doing with this, and it's quite obvious, is they're trying to appeal to the left, generalization, but to the left with the art of convenience. It's going to be great if you've got a digital ID, and then further down the line with what the EU are doing with a biometric ID, you walk in, it scans your face, you're in. Bosh, or your fingerprint, bosh, you're in. How convenient is that? You've not even got to put your hand in your pocket or say anything, because that's hard, isn't it? So they'll sell it in that way, but then with the people more on the right, they don't want any of that, and they're very vocal against that sort of state overreach and all that kind of stuff, so they're using immigration as an excuse to try and hoodwink them. So it's a bit of a pincer move. Convenience, mass immigration, bosh, but it's the same goal at the end of it, of course. But no one's buying it. And I'm encouraged by that, ladies and gentlemen. Literally no one is buying it at all. Because it's such the convenience stuff, fine, whatever, that might work for some people. But I don't think there's anyone, either on the left or on the right, or even within the sphere of politics, or even the mainstream media, bobbleheads that are pushing it or whatever. I don't think even any of them believe that it can help with mass immigration, because how? It doesn't make any sense. And when Keir Starmer is pressed on it, he doesn't have an answer either, because he's an idiot. He's obviously just a puppet. We all know that. But he doesn't have an answer. And so even when Laura Kuenssberg, if I'm saying that right, she's a journalist here apparently here in the UK working for the BBC, she was making the point to him that, well, you're selling this as a fact that it will stop illegal workers. It will stop employers employing people illegally. Yes. Well, but you need a national insurance number to work in this country. Anyway, the employer needs to get that. And so if they're not doing that, why does another thing coming in that they will ignore as well, because it's illegal? So if you're happy to employ someone illegally, why are you now not happy to employ someone illegally? So it doesn't make any sense. And he didn't have an answer, because he doesn't have an answer. So he just kind of kept, don't say to me, people don't say to me, it doesn't sound like him, does it? Because he sounds like Zippy from Rainbow. But don't say to me that why are we introducing this when we can all agree that there's a problem with mass immigration and illegal working? Yeah, we can. But that's not going to fix that. So that's why people are asking you the question, Keir. And you don't have an answer because you're an idiot. But as I say, I'm encouraged by the fact that it's backfiring massively. It's uniting people against Labour. But then I get my spidey senses, don't I? And I know people say, oh, you can't take a win. I will take a win. I like the fact that people are turning on him and his gaggle of buffoons. I like that. Of course I do. But there's always something else at play. And that always irks me a little bit, because he's come out and he's announced, very tough, isn't he? Listen to me when I say, I'm a big tough guy, that I'm introducing digital ID. It will be mandatory. Every adult will have it. Let me be clear. And then he does his weird thing, doesn't he? Let me be clear. So he gets all tough. There's no sort of almost just kind of trying to ease people in, as politicians generally do. They don't generally just come out there and just bosh in your face. They try and, he's not bothered doing that. Then they've spent the next sort of 3 or 4 days basically just working as a PR campaign for the Reform Party. Rather than talking about policies and what they're going to do and all that sort of stuff, they've spent the whole time, every single one of them, not just Starmer, every single one of them at the Labour Party conference, basically just attacking Nigel Farage and attacking Reform. Now, I've got no skin in the game for them either. But it's just that, again, has backfired, and they must have known it was going to, because it's just turned, you're obsessed, mate. And it's moved more people towards Nigel Farage and more people towards Reform. Now, if people think Reform are an alternative, which is what they're being sold as, in the same way that Donald Trump was sold as that in 2016, we'll come on to him later, because people were fed up of the uni party. They were sick and tired of it. Conservative, Labour, two cheeks of the same backside. Doesn't matter what party you vote for, the government gets in. People had twigged that. So you go, right, well, we can keep trying to sell them that, but they ain't buying. So in which case, we need an alternative. We need, that bum needs a third cheek. And that's what Reform, in my mind, is. And that's why, when I talk about them, some people get the ump. And I'm not talking about grassroots either. There's people within the Reform Party, grassroots level, council level. I know them. They're sound people. I'm talking about the hierarchy of it, where you've got someone like Nigel Farage, who, again, I keep saying that he whacked his pots and pans at 8 p.m. He wanted Tony Blair, snitch on your neighbour, Tony Blair, war criminal, Tony Blair, to be vaccine czar, the vaccine that killed and maimed countless people. Richard Tice, who's the deputy leader, who wanted NHS workers fired for refusing the vaccine. These are the people that are the alternative. And Richard Tice is in Israel. He's been there licking the wall. You have to if you want the gig. So my spidey senses are thinking, are we being pushed towards Reform? Because, and I've said this a few times, in my mind, it's those on the right that are going to be the most opposed to digital ID. You're trying to hoodwink them with mass immigration as an excuse. It's not working. They, I don't believe, are going to accept someone like Keir Starmer and the Labour Party introducing digital ID because they don't trust them as far as they could throw them. But if you bring an alternative in there that's previously been opposed to digital ID, like Reform, and then they go, some of Reform don't see a problem with it, but and have vocalised that on national television. But overall, they're standing against it, and they're standing against it now. So you vote for them to get rid of any prospect of digital ID, and then they come in and they go, look, it's worse than we thought. We didn't want to have to do this. We really didn't. And we didn't. We vocalised it at the time, remember? We said we didn't want it. But now we're in power. We've been left with this mess. We've got this, we've got that. We've got immigrants out in the villages. We don't know where they are. They could be doing anything. They could be living next door to your family, living opposite your kids' primary school. Oh, we've got to do something. Remember, we didn't want to. Oh, this is awful. And people go, oh, well, I do trust them. Because they did say they didn't want it. And politicians don't lie. Well, these ones do, but these ones don't. So, yeah. It's a theory, folks. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's how they do it. Because that's what Labour did. That's what they all do. Labour promised a bunch of stuff, got elected, small amount of people voting for them, but they got elected, and then they went, do you remember? They went, oh no, there's a black hole. This black hole that the Tories have left us. Didn't realise there was a black hole. That's annoying. Oh, man. So you know all that stuff we said we were going to do? Can't do any of it. But it's not our fault because of the black hole. So everything we're doing wrong is their fault, the previous parties. Yeah. It's what they do. They all do it. And, I'm not just singling out Labour. Conservatives do the same. They all do it. Everything good that happens, which is very... it's rare, but everything good that happens is they're doing, and everything bad that happens is the previous government's doing, of course. And also, did you see... Sorry, I'm going off like a fly in a greenhouse now. But did you see Keir Starmer as well trying to unite behind the flag? Like, we're about the flag. It's like, what? You've literally just taken someone else's campaign and gone, no, that's ours. That's ours. That's our campaign. And the irony of that is you had all these flags going up all over the United Kingdom, English flags and British flags everywhere, all on the lampposts and stuff. And, there's probably there's a grassroots element to it. There'll probably be a psyop element to it because there is to everything, unfortunately. But I liked it. I did. And, people watching this might go, oh, well, you didn't see through the psyop. No, I understand that part of it. I do. But I like the fact that people were like, do you know what? Yeah, I am an Englishman. Yeah, I am British, whatever. I'm going to put a flag up in my own country. I like that. And it's the only... Britain is the only place that's weird. If you went to Italy and said, excuse me, Mr. Italian man, Salvatore, can you take your Italian flag down? He'd laugh in your face. What are we talking about? But here in the UK, it was like a bizarre thing. So the reason I say it's ironic is because I live annoyingly in a Labour council, and they were taking down last week in my village. They were taking down all the English flags and all the British flags. Right now, my village was absolutely covered in them. Right, every single lamppost, whole way through, 2 on some of them, and they were cutting them down in the same few days that Keir Starmer's there going, we're behind the flag. It's our flag. It's our campaign. We're the true patriots here. Well, why were your henchmen cutting down the flags in my village then? But do you know what else I like, ladies and gentlemen? It's the next day I nipped to the shop and I came home and I said to my wife, I said, there's twice as many flags up. And there is. There's now 2 on every single lamppost. Now, again, like I say, there could be a psyop element to it, but I like that because what that is someone's doing something, being patriotic, whatever. They're coming from a good place, almost certainly locally. And the council has gone, no, you can't be patriotic in your own country. We're ripping them down. And instead of going, oh, bloody council, they've gone, well, put twice as many up then, mate. That's great. That's how we win, that kind of stuff. I love it. Now, the other part of this is in terms of digital ID is the legislation. So I've just said there what I think could possibly happen, which is that, we could be, pushed towards reform. I think we have been over the last probably couple of years, actually, to be fair. We could be pushed towards reform so that they can Trojan horse it in. That's a possibility. I wouldn't say that was off the table. The other part of this, which is very interesting, I was watching a video yesterday from a legal guy, and he was basically making the point that actually, Starmer's stood there and he's made this big proclamation that it's mandatory, it's going to happen, you deal with it. Well, it doesn't work like that because it needs to be a primary legislation to be able to do this. It's got you can't use it as a secondary legislation because it's got no primary legislation to latch onto because there isn't a precedent for it. So actually, this isn't just something that you can bolt on and go, oh yeah, sorry, deal with it. Actually, no, this has got to go through all the checks and balances. It's got to go through everything. It's got to go through the House of Commons, through the multiple readings. Then it's got to go through the House of Lords and all that stuff. So it isn't just Keir Starmer going, it's happening, right? So that's one part of it that can't happen. So I go, okay, well, that's encouraging then, because all the other political parties have all come out basically. They didn't at first, but they have now. Now they've seen the public backlash, and they're like, we're against it too. Yeah, sorry. Like the Lib Dems, Ed Davey was like, he was quite happy to support it before, and now, oh no. Because they've seen, obviously, like I say, that the public are like, no thanks, mate. And they've seen the public unite left and right against it. So they're like, oh, no, we're against it. So you've got people like Rupert Lowe, who I'm sure actually probably is genuinely against digital ID, to be fair. He's got a blind spot with Israel, but they all have. But he's quite good on this. And so, he's written this letter to all these MPs. They're all coming out and opposing it. People like Jeremy Corbyn and stuff are opposing it. So people on the left as well. So how are they getting that through? Yes, they've got a majority, but there's enough MPs within the Labour Party themselves that oppose it. Your main ones on the stage there with their red baseball caps, like Poundland Donald Trump, and that's saying something. They're all for it, but a lot of others aren't. So I don't think they'll get it through, and I don't think they'll get it through the House of Lords and all that sort of stuff. Unless. Now, on this week's Bring the Fire, I'm talking to Claire Wills Harrison, who's a former lawyer. Very, very bright woman and lovely and outspoken and gets it. And so she was making the point with the Coronavirus Act. Is everything that was in that was so draconian and ridiculous that would probably not have got through as just a regular act of legislation. Without a pandemic, we're going to put this through. If there's ever a pandemic, we're going to put this through. It wouldn't have got through. It went through on emergency readings. So it was basically done in a day. And then afterwards, after all the stuff happened, those that had voted in favour of it in a state of panic went, oh God, I didn't realise that was in it. Yeah, because you didn't read it, mate. You just signed it off because it was an act of emergency legislation going through. And we all know what that led to. So that's another way that they could get this through, digital ID. So what could that be? That could be an escalation with Russia. It could be us coming in on the side of Israel and the United States against Iran, which is bubbling away again, as we said it would when everyone was saying, yay, Donald Trump, peacemaker. Or a terrorist act in the United Kingdom, a huge terror attack, blame it on immigrants, get the fear going, terror, especially if you were to target the young, to target children. Terror, emergency legislation, get it through, bosh, sign, done. That is a possibility, ladies and gentlemen. Now, another part of it as well, and this is something to pay attention to, and this is the next story that I'm going to come to, and then we'll throw back to iconic.com, is what's being built around. So these little pockets of legislation that are coming in that seem completely unconnected. The trees for the woods and all that. So you've got the data access bill that's gone through, which if you read that, basically removes all the checks and balances in terms of your data. Then you've got the push to take us out of the European Court of Human Rights. Well, I'm not a big fan of the EU. I'm not a fan of that stuff. But within that legislation, there are checks and balances in terms of your right to privacy and your right to freedom, essentially. I mean, the EU are making a mockery of it, but it's there. And we could use it to oppose. So they want to come out of that. And that's something that the Tories and Reform are all about getting out of as well. So be careful what you wish for, folks, on that front, right? So you've got the Data Access Bill removing checks and balances, the push to get out of the Human Rights Act there that would, protect us in a certain way. And you've also got the Climate and Nature Bill, which goes then into more draconian controls in terms of climate change, which they're going to obviously apply all this stuff to in terms of your digital ID. And Tony Blair, of course, the butcher of Baghdad, pushing even further and more obviously for a social credit score, social credit system, a China-based social credit system. So I would watch those little things as well, folks, that are just coming in and seem disconnected. Now, with that in mind, this is the final story for the kind of social media section of this. Now, I heard this while I was driving into work yesterday, and I'm ashamed to admit, when I heard the way it was sold in the news story, I thought, oh, right. I mean, they didn't talk about the phone tracking bit, but it was like, oh, right. So this is the story. The future of rail ticketing, so railway train ticketing, comes to Yorkshire with smartphone tracking fares. Now, when I said, oh, that sounds like a good idea, They didn't mention that stuff on the radio. What they were saying on the radio that was basically that instead of, because train fares in the United Kingdom are mental, ladies and gentlemen, like well, everything is in the United Kingdom, but train fares are particularly expensive, which is mad because they say they don't want you driving cars because of the climate. So you think you'd make the railways more affordable, but there you go. So how it was sold was basically you've got all these different rail fares on different websites and stuff, and they can be huge differences between them. And so actually what it's saying is, right, if you're going, rather than buying a ticket from a certain place, that when you go from a place to a place, you automatically get the cheapest fare for that journey. So it doesn't, basically you can't get hoodwinked into paying double what you should have done. It will always give you the cheapest fare available. That's how it was sold on the radio. So you go, well, yeah, that should be the way anyway. That's great. Read the small print. Passengers on the line between Leeds and Harrogate, or Harrogate, depending how posh you are, can now opt to pay for travel by having their mobile phone tracked. At this point, you can opt into it. At this point. The 18-mile stretch of line operated by Northern is the latest to be calibrated for the new digital pay-as-you-go ticketing system. Rather than buying a ticket, passengers enlist with a new experimental scheme and use an app on their mobile phone. At the start of their journey, they tap the signal that they are about to travel. I love that there's a typo. They're about to travel. Their trip is tracked by GPS. I'm shout to travel. At the end of the trip, they tap to end the journey. They shout to end the journey, right? Now, like I say, I heard it on the radio. It was framed differently. It was framed in a way to save money. And that's the point, isn't it? It's convenient. It's good. Of course, you should have cheaper train travel. Of course, you should. Sure, of course, it should be more affordable. But then when you get there, you go, okay, so you're tracking my phone. So you're tracking where I'm going at all times. Of course, that's part of it. But then, they can track your phone anyway. So whatever. You go, well, so if my phone, which then will connect obviously into my digital ID once that all comes in, not that it's going to because we're not having it, but they want it to. Once they get it in, let's pretend they do, then they would then have the ability to go, well, no, you can't do that because it won't work. Sorry, computer says no. Now, in China, and I throw back to China all the time in terms of their social credit system, which already from the previous story, we know they're planning. They banned in 2019 alone 23 million Chinese citizens from using plane and train travel because of their compliance score. Their social credit score was too low. Now, theirs is all done through their mobile phone, their smartphones, and it's all done through their digital ID as well. So to see this news story sold as a good thing, you go, okay, yeah, but then connect that to what they're doing with the digital ID, and it all starts to, okay, I can see now. Okay, I can see how all these different things are all coming together at the same time for a reason. So like I say, focus on digital ID, of course, it's the hill to die on. Bosh, absolutely focus on that. I'm sat here in a t-shirt like a prat, of course, yes. But at the same time, be aware, folks, of the little bits of legislation and the little things that are promoted in the media that seem like a good idea that you go, okay, read the small print. Because it will all connect into that thing because this is how important it is to them. Okay, that's all for the sort of public, social media section of Trending this morning. You can go over to iconic.com and watch the rest of it for free. Of course, we're going to be talking about Trump and Pfizer. Didn't see that coming. And we're also going to be talking about Israel paying American influencers an awful amount of money, a ridiculous amount of money to say positive things on social media.